Hello and welcome, and in today's video I'm going to share with you the most unusual Ark creatures, so let's get into it. In at number 10 is the Astrocetus, and this is one of those creatures which on the surface may not seem that unusual, but I really can't think of any other game which has a creature like the Astrocetus. And also, this was a very new thing to Ark as well. No space things had been done in Ark, and the fact that with Gen 1 we had a space biome, and then we had this hunking beast of a creature, it is definitely an unusual Ark tame, as in it isn't like most of the other creatures in Ark. And there are only a couple of creatures which I can think of which are as unusual as this thing, and also at the same time follow the similar genre that this thing has of being a sea creature of sorts. The Astrodelphis obviously being a great example there, that meaning space dolphin instead of space whale, which is what Astrocetus means. Speaking of the Astrodelphis, next up is the Astrodelphis, and the only reason why I would say this is a little bit more unusual than the Astrocetus is its design is more unusual, and also its abilities are a lot more unusual than the Astrocetus. The Astrodelphis is essentially like a dart plane. This thing can just soar through the air and do so many acrobatics and shoot loads of lasers, and yes, it has technically been done before, but you wouldn't really expect it out of this creature, and its design and overall feel is very unusual, and I can't think of any Ark creature other than the Astrodelphis, of course, which controls like the Astrodelphis. And also, again, with the Astrocetus and Astrodelphis, it doesn't really make sense that they work outside of space, but they kind of have to. You know, it is the game of Ark, and there are many other maps, and there are many other biomes that aren't space biomes. So yeah, it just kind of breaks the immersion for me there. But you know, it's Ark, they're fantasy creatures. Who knows, maybe they can just dart around in non-space as well. Although they do make a lot more sense in space biomes. But obviously, for most of the time which you'll be using these things, you won't be using them in space biomes. You'll be using them to travel across the map, as both of them are great traveling mounts. The Astrodelphis being better for traveling, obviously, as it is a significantly faster creature, and also it's just a lot more fun to ride around on. Next up, we have the Bulldog, and this is strangely one of the cutest yet horrifying creatures that Ark has to offer, and obviously it debuted with Aberration, and I'm pretty sure it hasn't appeared in any other map since, but be sure to correct me if I did get that wrong. And in terms of this thing's abilities, it is just a light pet like the Shinehorn and the Featherlight, which essentially will debuff things like Reapers and the Nameless. Not really useful in any other map, but they're definitely really cute, and the fact that there is a mask for the Bulldog, and you kind of put the Noglin in the same spot here as they are similar creatures, they definitely are respected but very unusual tames. Now, I don't know what it is, but the Managama always seems really weird to me, and the Managama just seems like a creature which doesn't seem like any other Ark creature which I can think of in any way, shape or form. This is essentially like a Ferox type thing with ice fists that can jump into the air and has some sort of elemental power, and that also has ice breath and can freeze creatures. This is definitely an oddity and an unusual tame which hasn't been revisited since. There is no other Ark creature to this day which is like the Managama, and also the spelling for it is pretty unusual as well. But once you learn how to spell it once, you kind of don't forget it, as its name is that unusual. And it definitely is an extremely useful creature. Obviously, as you can see, it can travel across the map with insane speeds, and it deals a pretty reasonable amount of damage as well, which you can't get out of every great traveling mount. But the Managama definitely is great for that. And like I said as well, it is great at freezing creatures, and in a moment, you will see what it is like when it does freeze creatures. The only thing you really have to watch out for, though, is this thing is extremely buggy and will get stuck on things, and it just did get stuck on something there. In terms of it freezing, it will freeze creatures for a very, very long amount of time, which is why it is heavily used by PvP griefers. I've heard not as much anymore since they got nerfed, but they still get used a little bit in terms of PvP griefing still to this day. Now, the Rock Drake is pretty similar to the Managama in a lot of things, but I think it is slightly more unusual, partly because it did come first. Obviously, Aberration was the map that came up before Extinction, and also just the way that this creature is formed is a little bit more unusual. This is kind of like a somewhat T-Rexy chicken. I don't really know where those two creatures came from, but I would just call it kind of a T-Rexy, chickeny, turkey thing. I don't really know where I'm going with that. It is so unusual in the form that it is. You can't really relate it to other creatures, which is very, very weird, and definitely a sign which it is very unusual. But its taming method isn't particularly one of the most unusual, like you would expect from this creature. It is the exact same as the Wyvern. You simply steal the egg from the Rock Drake nest, and then boom, once you've obviously incubated and raised up that creature, you have yourself a Rock Drake. And also they do come in a lot of colours as well, this pink being an example, which is actually quite weird for a lot of Ark creatures, as most creatures do follow a similar colour pattern, whereas the Rock Drake has a wealth of colours. And I actually kind of really like the tealy blue more than the colour which I've got here. I like a tealy blue, like a bluey green is what I kind of like on a Wyvern. Not a Wyvern, this is a Rock Drake. Why am I talking about Wyverns? In terms of Rock Drake colour, that is my preference. What is your Rock Drake colour? Comment in the comments down below. Don't know why I said comment too many times in a sentence, but comment in the comments down below. What is your favourite Rock Drake colour? As I'd really like to know. Mine is definitely that kind of like bluey, greeny thing, but you know, some of you may be digging this pink and purple, which we got here. No, it's not pink and purple. Pink and blue. I may be slightly colourblind. In at number 5 is the gas bags, and this is just a creature which is such an oddity. And also, I'm seriously questioning Wildcard here. How did they come up with the idea for this? Or did we come up with the idea for this? Honestly, I don't know, but somehow this thing was created, and it's been in the game since Extinction, and I don't really get how it came around or how the idea came for it. It's literally a farting gas animal which flies on its own gas. It's a very, very weird premise, but actually a very cool creature which doesn't require a saddle. The saddle's only there if you have friends, unlike me, because I don't really have friends that I play Ark with, or friends in general, you know, living that life. But that saddle is there if you do have friends, unlike any YouTuber which you can really think of. Us YouTubers, yeah, but we don't really get the friends. This is why we do YouTube, you know. But if you do have friends, then your friend can go on the saddle, and then you can travel together, which is nice, you know. The Diplodocus has a significantly higher passenger count, but that's not on the list because that isn't a very interesting or unusual creature. Anyway, I should stop talking about the Diplodocus. What's actually good about the gas bags? Well, on Extinction, this is actually one of the best creatures out there for gathering metal. Obviously, you still have the RG, and the gas bags is significantly harder to control than the RG, but it is a lot cuter. And it's just, I like using the creatures which came on that map. And I'll always try to use the gas bags, as long as I can control it at the time, to do some metal runs. And once you learn it, it is a really, really great creature for doing those metal runs. If you don't just get stuck in a trench with loads of wyverns and get killed a couple of times. That happened because I forgot to enable creative mode, stupidly, for this B-roll. But, you know, editing, it looks like I did nothing wrong and I escaped perfectly. But there was multiple attempts in this, and then I flew too high, and I got caught into the world border. I am definitely not a great pilot of the gas bags. Also, if you find yourself like this, make sure to dismount just before you hit the ground. It'll save you. Now, the Rhinoganatha, I think, came from us. It was from some kind of creature voting thing anyway, and we did vote for this creature to be in the game, and it is one of the more unusual ones. There isn't any other Ark creature which is really like this thing. And also, I know loads of people are saying Rhinoganathas are rare, and I get that they're rare. On ASA at the moment, I've seen about 5 Rhinoganathas in the swamp biome. Is there an overspawn of Rhinoganathas on ASA? Wildcard, can you tell me please, if you're watching this video, because I've had way too many encounters with this thing. I've seen 1 Giga, and I've seen 5 Rhinoganathas, and these things are generally a lot rarer than a Giga, as they only spawn in one specific biome, whereas Gigas can spawn on several places around the map. In terms of the Rhinoganatha's uses though, this thing is essentially just an upgraded Quetz, which is a lot faster and deals more damage, as unlike a Quetz, it will deal more damage. It is significantly harder to tame and uses the taming method, which the Reaper has, which I'll talk about because the Reaper is ahead on this list. Oh my god, spoilers. But either way, the Reaper is ahead on this list, so I'll talk about his taming method similarly there. But you can always check out my Rhino Ganatha taming guide if you want to know fully, in detail, how to tame this thing. And you'll see brief b-roll of me actually taming it, because this is from the guide video. I was just a little bit lazy at the time, and I was just like, I'll take my guide video and then I'll just chuck that into b-roll, which is obviously why you're seeing me tame it here, and you're not seeing me tame every other Ark creature in all of the other b-rolls. But it is a very long and arduous taming process, which is extremely difficult and requires 2 Rhino Ganathas, not 1. You're going to need 2 of those things, and you're going to need pheromone, you're going to need to kill 1, and then yeah, there's so much. Just check out the tutorial. I really shouldn't talk about it more. The Rhino Ganatha is just one of those creatures which is really unusual, and we voted for, and for some reason spawns way too much on ASA. Have no idea why, but it does. This is the Rhino Ganatha. It's one of Ark's most unusual tames. The spoiler is here, with the Reaper being in at number 3, and the Reaper is a even more unusual tame than the Rhino Ganatha, as obviously it came way before. The Rhino Ganatha is the most recent creature which has been added to Ark, apart from the Fastuasuchus. Don't know if that is in ASA at the moment, but I'm going to count that as the most recent Ark creature. Is that thing coming to Scorched Earth or the island? Either way, it might not be here yet, so don't take my word on that one. Not quite sure. That may be a Scorched Earth creature. Actually, thinking about it, that is a Scorched Earth creature. The Rhino Ganatha was the one for the island. Yes, the Rhino Ganatha is the latest creature of Ark at the moment. And the Reaper has obviously been in Ark for ages. It came out in Aberration. That was way back in 2017. And this thing was such an oddity at the time, but it really fits into that map, and its taming method is one of the most unusual in the game. Essentially what you do is you'll get a Reaper Queen to a really low amount of health. You can use a trap for this, it will make it so much easier, and you can use light pets as well. Not for the other bit of the taming method though, as that won't work with a light pet. You can't have a light pet when this thing impregnates you when you go up to it after you put its health down. At least I'm pretty sure you can't. Don't anyway, as it may somewhat fail, as the Reapers really do not like light pets. But after you have been impregnated by the Reaper, obviously after you've damaged it and the impregnation has occurred, you just get a ton of XP, and then boom, you have yourself a Reaper. In at number 2 is the Bloodstalker, and this is just essentially a spider with, I don't think 8 eyes, but it may have 8 eyes, or it may have 12. Honestly, comment down below how many eyes the Bloodstalker has, as right now I don't know. I'm sure I could look up an image, but I know one of you out there knows the answer to this. Well, obviously you can tell why the Bloodstalker is so unusual. No other Ark creature is really like this, and you could say the Aranio is another kind of spidery thing, but that is just kind of like a normal spider. The Bloodstalker is like a vampire, blood-sucking Spider-Man thing with an obscene amount of eyes. It may be 8, it may be 12, I'm not quite sure. Make sure to let me know. I want to know how many eyes the Bloodstalker has, as I'm really not sure, as I have not seen one up close and personal for a while. But also, this thing's taming method is very much an oddity. Like no other Ark creature, apart from the Desmodus, obviously, off the top of my head, which I can think of, has the same taming method. You essentially get blood bags, which you will need to syringe out of your body, or you can obviously use the Desmodus to harvest them now, but originally you just had to use the blood syringe to get those, and then it will just eat those, and then you'll tame yourself a Bloodstalker, and you can feed it some creatures before to get 100% effectiveness. But honestly, I've never bothered with that, as I'm not going to do like insane things with this creature. Like, I'm not going to fight bosses with the Bloodstalker. I just want a good one. And obviously for missions, you're not even going to need a Bloodstalker, but it is good to get one, obviously, so you can get to those missions, so you can get all of those hexagons. But before you get a Bloodstalker, you should definitely go to the Bogrish missions to practice. And finally, in at number 1 is the Velonosaur. And the reason why I have put this thing in at number 1 isn't because it has the weirdest taming method or anything along those lines. It is just, there has never been any kind of creature like the Velonosaur apart from the Velonosaur. I can think of no other Ark creature like this tame. And albeit, yes, it does have one of the simplest taming methods out of all of the creatures on the list. It is just a very simple knockout tame. No other Ark creature compares to this thing in terms of what it is. This thing, again, is just a moving turret, and there's no other creature which does this like the Velonosaur. And sadly, the damage of the turrets doesn't scale with melee, but obviously you can keep leveling up that stamina to shoot even more turrets out. And obviously I wouldn't recommend it in this close of a proximity, but it is definitely an extremely useful thing, which when you ride this thing you will use a lot. But it also just have your general just attack, hack and slash, and it also can shake spines off of it as well. And also I think when you look at it head on when it's shooting turrets, it's a little bit creepy. That animation just to me is a little bit on the creepy side. But anyway, that is the end of today's video. And comment down below, what is the most unusual Ark Tame to you? As I'd really like to hear your thoughts. And also, how many eyes does the Bloodstalker have? I'll see you all later.